probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
So do you.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here, back again for another episode of Summer School. That's our college football preview series on the Cover 3 podcast today. Cats up. Wildcats. Jason Scheer, Wildcat Authority, longtime authority on Arizona, man. What's going on?
Not too much. Having a nice summer. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. So I know we're both trying to stay cool. Me and Orlando, you out there in the desert. Something that has not been cool, it's been pretty hot, is all the activity in and out of Arizona, including at the head coaching position. So Jedd Fisch left for Washington after Kalen DeBoer left Washington to go to Alabama. And I thought Arizona made a really kind of sneaky good hire in Brent Brennan, who I had followed at San Jose State. What have you seen from Brennan so far there at Arizona?
Yeah, you know, the biggest thing I've seen from him is he embraces the overall culture of a program. And Jedd Fisch was very careful in how he built the culture of the program. And the biggest thing going back to the spring is, like, if he didn't build that culture and he wasn't liked by the current roster, these guys would have left. And Arizona would have been in a significantly different position than it was previously. And you could tell, just like he's been around the block, right? Like he's coached for a while. He knows what he's doing. He knows exactly his style and all that and who he wanted to bring in. And so, but the biggest thing that I've noticed is that the team has bought in to pretty much everything. Like, you don't hear off the record complaints or anything like that. The team's bought in. It believes him. And that's kind of the first step that he needed to accomplish.
How will they look different on offense in terms of what they want to run?
You know, it remains to be seen. I think that, you know, Dino Babers was hired as their offensive coordinator. There's a lot of different looks than they had under Fisch. Fisch ran a very pro-style offense, and I think we'll see a lot of that at Arizona. The biggest thing that I noticed during the spring was the tight ends are going to play a significant role in this offense. And they had Tanner McLaughlin last season. He's in the NFL now, but it was kind of just one guy. A lot of two tight end sets, a lot of power sets that they're running. But they're also, you know, they went out and they added running backs. The running game will probably be emphasized a little bit more than it was last year. But it's not a crazy complicated offense. It's meant to get the ball in the playmakers' hands, just like Fisch's was. But they added a few tight ends, and in that position, they're probably going to utilize a little bit more than they did last season.
Do you think that's preference, or hey, this is what we have on the roster and it's some protectionism for the offensive line, or a combination of both? Or what do you think the shift is there?
I think it's preference. You know, at San Jose State, they had Sam Olsen. They used him quite a bit. They actually brought him to Arizona. He entered the portal. But they added guys. You know, normally I would say that it's probably just kind of roster related, but you know, they're also recruiting one or two tight ends per class right now. And you can just tell, like, you know, I would say they have a tight end room with 4 capable tight ends, maybe 5. And so they have them on the roster. They're going to use them, and they're going to get, you know, unique sets where we saw tight ends moving back to fullback and guys going out and lining up at wide receiver. And, you know, I think from what Baber said is not a lot of teams do it. And they want to do things offensively and defensively that maybe not a lot of teams are used to seeing. And kind of giving different looks and hopefully getting an advantage that way.
As an ACC guy myself, I am pretty curious to see what this Babers offense will look like. Of course, married with Brennan, who's, you know, produced quite a number of points there at San Jose. But I mean, last year, Syracuse was so banged up at quarterback, they were playing a tight end, like literally for a good bit of the year, including in the bowl game, if you watch that. And in prior years, like, their offensive line was just decimated by injury, really, like 2 out of the 3 years prior to last year, where they had to play tight end at quarterback. So we really haven't seen him play with a full deck in quite some time. But at one point, he was certainly well thought of as an offensive mind. Defensively, what are they looking to run? And in your estimation, do they have the people to do it?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest positives of the offseason was they were able to retain Dwayne Akina. You know, as defensive coordinator, he was headed to Texas. Had Jedd Fisch stayed at Arizona, he was going to go to Texas with Johnny Nansen. Brett Brennan is hired. offers Akina the DC job right away. That was able to keep a lot of players on defense. They're going to run pretty much the same thing they did last year. They're going to be more aggressive. They're going to blitz more. Akina likes blitzing, but one thing that worked a lot for them was the dollar package, basically a 4-2-5, and they're going to run that quite a bit because their strength is in the secondary. They have very good safeties. Dekario Davis is a really good corner, and it's just kind of the strength of the defense. So it's going to look similar to last year. Akina said that he really didn't change that much. Maybe there's a few different looks, but the biggest thing is he said they're absolutely going to blitz more than they did last season, because last season they didn't. Nansen's style wasn't really blitzing. It was kind of hold your gaps, hold your lanes, and the kind of bend but don't break. And Akina's going to be a little more aggressive than they were last season.
Let's go to Big 12 Media Day. Who's a guy who you don't think will be voted first or second team All Big 12 in the preseason, but will have a shot to make it in the postseason version?
Offensive lineman Wendell Moy for Arizona is really good. The issue is he plays next to Jonas Savanea, who is a first-round pick. I almost put Wendell Moy on the first team preseason ballot that I turned in. To me, he would probably be a first-team Pac-12 guy if the conference was still around. He's really good. Arizona's offensive line, it's kind of there's some returning guys, but they were really hurt during the spring. But Jonas Savanea, I expect to be first team, and it would not surprise me if Wendell Moy kind of rose up. And then running back, the Big 12 is so loaded at running back that it's really one of the best conferences in America. But Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is a guy that wound up decommitting from Arizona, then he's back at Arizona, but they love him a lot. He put up some really good numbers in New Mexico, and he's a guy that I think is going to put up numbers once again at Arizona.
What are the deepest rooms on this team?
Offense. I think the wide receiver position. Yeah, they lost Jacob Cowing, and obviously they got to replace him, and that won't be easy. But they went out and they added quite a few guys. They're actually going to have a rotation. Under Fish, he didn't believe in wide receiver rotation. Kind of did the NFL model where you play 3 guys, maybe 4. They probably got like 7 capable guys. They added Raymelo Murphy from Old Dominion. They added Juco, Jeremiah Patterson. They kept pretty much most of the guys from last year. So they're going to have competition at wide receiver. The defensive line, I think, is interior. I think it's probably deeper than people realize. I do think, that there's some questions at defensive end, but inside, they probably are able to rotate, probably have 2-3 units that there isn't a big drop off. I'm probably a little more confident in the interior defensive line than some others.
So which fall position battles are going to be the most meaningful for this team this year?
Linebacker, Jacob Manu has one linebacker position locked up, done deal, one of the best linebackers in the country. The other one, I don't know. In an ideal world, they would have added one in the portal. They were going to add Nunnery from Florida, the Florida transfer. It looked like he committed, and then he wound up going to Texas State. They had Alec Marenko they thought they were going to get, and then he wound up going to Kansas State. So they did not land the portal linebacker that they wanted to bring in. They have guys on the roster, Tay Brown, Quamela, Gaihu, Justin Flo. But the problem is that none of those guys have stepped up. Like, they're all young. They wanted an old veteran linebacker to play next to Manu, and they weren't able to get it. So that's the one that I really have my eye on. And then the second corner. Dekario Davis obviously has one corner position locked up, but Ephesians Prysock went to Washington, and that was another position. They added a couple guys from the portal. Demetrius Freeney from Miami is one guy they added. They returned a couple guys from last season's roster, but they don't have that guy that they can count on. So those two are pretty wide open and definitely something I have a close eye
on. So I'm looking at the schedule. There has to be, they have 10 Big 12 teams listed. One of these has to be a non-conference game, obviously.
Kansas State. Yeah, okay. Kansas State is a non-conference. The previous AD, Dave Hickey, tried very hard to get out of it. Just didn't want to do it, play a Big 12 team, a non-conference. Kansas State wasn't really up for it, and then it was hard to schedule so little in advance. And so Kansas State is a non-conference game.
You kind of have to love, in some ways, how this schedule sets up. I mean, drawing, BYU, Arizona State, Houston, even if those teams aren't quite as bad as we think, they're still bottom half of the league teams, I would say, with some relative certainty. And then at Utah, not easy, clearly. If you guys know all about that, having been in the Pac-12, that's at least in my numbers, one of the very best home field advantages in the sport, maybe most underrated. And then at UCF, which is not particularly easy to go play at, although it's a little cooler in November than it would be a September game. Who's the guy who has to maybe exceed expectations or maybe like arrive a year early if this team wants to make it to the Big 12 title game?
I think one of those corners, Emmanuel Carnley and Celestine and Freeney, like those guys have to be ready. One of those guys has to emerge because teams aren't going to throw at Takario Davis. They stopped doing it last year. They tacked Prysock even. They tacked whoever was in there. And that's what they're going to do right away. If they don't have to throw at Takario, they're not going to do it. And so one of those guys has to emerge. Like they have to be good, or else teams are going to pick on it. And, there's ways around it. Like Dwayne Akita, Arizona has a really good nickel trade on Stukes. He actually started off as a corner, but he's not as good at corner as he is nickel. And so if they have to move him to corner, they probably take a hit at nickel. And in an ideal world, everything stays the same, and one of those guys at corner emerges because they're going to be tested really, really early.
Sometimes at summer school, we get a little flack for not asking about the stars because, like, if you're listening to a college ball podcast over the summer, you probably already know who Noah Fifita is, and you probably already know who Ted McMillan is. But I mean, do either of these guys have a chance to go down as like the best player in the history of their position at Arizona if they stay?
Yeah, I mean, look, T-Mac's going to already break some records this season. It's funny because Arizona hired Bobby Wade as its wide receiver coach, and that's whose records are going to fall. And he's already said, like, look, like I'm coaching him to break my records. He's going to break the yardage, the receptions. I mean, when it's all said and done statistically, T-Mac is probably going to be the best wide receiver in Arizona school history. Noah Fifita, if he stays another 3 years, he's only a redshirt sophomore, is going to probably put up numbers that are the best in school history. These guys, their legacy, when it's all said and done, will be among the best in this program's history. And there's been some good ones to come through, quarterbacks, Nick Foles and a few others, but Noah's right there. I mean, if Noah stays, as long as he should stay, his numbers are going to be the best that this program's seen. And Arizona's had some good wide receivers with Bobby Wade, Dennis Northcutt, et cetera. But T-Mac's numbers are going to surpass them.
Jason, really enjoyed this. We'll be following Wildcat Authority all offseason and all throughout the season, fall position battles coming up. And we'll see if Arizona can maybe win the Big 12 in their maiden voyage in this league. And we'll be following you, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.